Well, it looks like we have Bob Wheeler on the phone. Has called in. It's going to begin about a quarter after, and I think you did a good job. Hi, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for waiting a moment. I had a surprise. This is a call-in show, so we're live, alert, awake.
I love that. That's great.
Well, one of the things, by the way, you may want to do in the future, if there are ever any prepper shows, preparedness or survivalist shows in your area, is take your act down there. Well, we're going to find out what that is, but everybody needs help financially. You know, it's the times. But let me give you just let me tell people a little bit about you. I'm just meeting you, but your secretary, John, has done a great job to get everything in my hot little hand, and I've enjoyed. She's quite the gal, so you should be proud of her.
I am. She's great.
She is. Is she Eastern European?
She is. She's from the Czech Republic.
Yeah, I figured she was because I had to laugh because they struggle with English. Everybody struggles with English because it's. And I had to laugh. You notice if you read I sent the memo for it. I didn't mark it. I didn't know how to do that. But she said people need to get out of debt. She spelled it DEPT, period. And, to us here in America, that means department.
That's funny. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. Well, that's okay. She told me that I was talking to Dr. Pepper.
Fair enough. We're even. Well, I try to be peppy for my age. I do the best I can.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I've been doing this for 40 years. I wrote my book 40 years ago. It's had its 40th anniversary this year, and it's done pretty well. I'm self-published. It's been an accounting nightmare since day one. Fortunately, before I wrote the book, I'd gotten my MBA with a slide rule. So I said, well, why didn't you go pop for a calculator? I said, you don't understand. It hadn't been invented. And they just look at you like, you're kidding. I said, I can tell you when the jet engine, when the DC-8, the DC-7, the DC-8, and the Boeing 707, I said, I can tell you when they became reality. They didn't exist. When I went to Europe on a Tri-Connie, I came back 2 years later on a DC-8. I mean, so things change rapidly.
Things change.
The curved windshield. Well, the curved windshield in automobiles came out in my lifetime, just as I graduated high school.
Wow! So it's nice to have electricity.
Well, I grew up with an outhouse. I grew up in the country as a farm boy, so I've been through all of this, and I remember never had to load my own gun, but I always had a double barrel 10 gauge, and I'm going to tell you. It kept me humble because every time I fired, not only was it about knock me down, I couldn't hear it for several minutes afterwards. But that was this, and this is now, and life is a lot better. Great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here. I told Jana we'd be a little bit. Listen, we're serious, but we're lighthearted about it. And I'm looking forward to the stand-up comedian. I hope that comes out while we're on the show.
I will see if it does. I might let it out.
Oh, great. Well, let me tell people a little bit that one of the things that you've decided in your career, and we all make decisions, and I made my life decisions based on what I call a rule of three, and I have about 157 of them at the moment I run my life on. The listen was, nobody knows it all.
Right.
Nobody ever has, and nobody ever will.
No.
So if you start with that premise, we're all humble enough that we can learn together. And so today, yours is be the change you want to see in the world. And Mahatma Gandhi said that many, many years ago. And he practiced change. And I think one of those things, I can't remember if our friend Dave Ramsey said it, but, for things to change, you got to change. And I'm sure you're going to mention that as one of the preemptive strikes we have to take if we're going to get control of financial function. So anyway, you've been on a crusade for helping people grow personally and getting their financial act together. I think you call it a cross-pollination, or at least Jenna did when she sent me this note.
Yes.
And she said that you cross-pollinated your accounting practice with a kind of new approach to personal finances, and they are tied together. But you have to be able to count. to count and to be accountable. So, given all that, what you're trying to do is helping people by, again, with your sense of humor, some information, some motivation, and then helping them budget, because most of us, even with experience, tend to disdain. I did have a friend once, literally, when I was my friend in Europe with me when I went over, actually kept a little notebook, one of these little what do you call it, spiral bound notebooks at the top, and it was about the size of a 3x5 card. He wrote down every transaction he made, everything he spent. It didn't matter if it was 5 francs or 10 francs. He wrote it down, and you know what? He knew he knew where every penny went, and he knew what he could cut. And to him, it was a game. It wasn't privation. It was actually his success. So that was a passion, and you indicate that people need that passion if they're gonna succeed. And yours is to help people get insight about how they can control their emotions. People don't seem to understand, but every decision that we make is emotional, isn't it?
Absolutely. Every single decision we make in our life is emotional.
No decision. You really?
No, it's amazing because a lot of people will sit there and say, no, money is very logical. I don't have any triggers. And then they go right into their triggers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll find out what a trigger is. You're going to explain that to us. But one of the things you do is that you said you love satire. I'm looking forward to that. I'm sarcastic. There's a world of difference, but they start the same. And then we, of course, you're currently the chief financial officer at the Comedy Store, for heaven's sakes. That's got to be a great venue for you.
Yeah, free stage time.
That's great. Well, as a college graduate back in the East, I'm from North Carolina. So, Memphis is pretty close to, at least we have a states that touch corners or touch common boundaries. And you've done a lot of things like travel, and you've been over to Mount Kilimanjaro as well as on to the base camp there on Everest, which is pretty exciting, and hopefully you'll tell us about that. So and you also apparently are a distance runner. You run for fun?
I do. I run marathons.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that gives you time to think, doesn't it?
Or weep. Absolutely.
Go ahead. There's a slight delay, so sometimes you'll find we trip over each other. Just go on. I mean, it's okay.
Just keep speaking. No worries.
Yep. So tell us a little bit about why you, as a CPA, practicing in L.A., first of all, I wonder, he must earn a heck of a lot of money to stay in L.A. because we see everybody knows how expensive it is to live in California, but we'll pass over that one also. But you learn to adjust. People there need your help, apparently, because they all have the same kind of problems. But how do you help people to feel grateful they have a job and grateful they have means, because we are still, in terms of disposable income, the richest country in the world?
Yeah, it's difficult because initially, my opinion is that most of us in this country are feeling pretty entitled. And so to sit there and say you might need to make an adjustment or maybe make some different choices and curb the spending, to most people just is outrageous because, hey, I can put that on a credit card. Why would you even tell me to back off? And there's just this real sense of I got to have it now. Critical that I have a new iPhone. It's critical that I have the newest flat screen with a curve. And, it's difficult to try and adjust that mindset for a lot of people that don't live in consciousness.
Well, so curbing that anxiousness to be equal to keep up with the Joneses is what you're going to talk to us about, I bet.
Yeah, a lot. Well, that's, a lot of, I think, a really bad problem in this country is we compare ourselves to other people. So even wealthy people, I work with a lot of people with a lot of money, and they'll say, yeah, but I don't have as many jets as that guy, or he sold 3 companies. I only sold 1. I'm such a failure. So there are people like that. There was a guy on Forbes magazine. He went from something like 87th. He went from like 34th to 87th. He jumped in front of a train. a couple years
the world's
back.
Income. Yeah, oh golly.
He's really upset. He's not in the top 50. Wow, of richest people in the world. So,
except as Donald Trump says, except for the what is it? The chase. What do you call it? The art of the deal.
Yeah.
Except for that, after a while, somebody asked me. Somebody asked my dad once what he would do if he became a billionaire. He said, "I'd give my wife a checkbook, and I'd probably never see her again."
That's probably true.
He said, "Yeah, just give your wife a checkbook or a credit card, and you don't have to worry about her anymore because you can afford to do anything you want to do." I thought it was clever. Dad's not known for his sense of humor.
No, that's. I think a lot of people would do the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we have a lot in this country, and we just don't realize how much we have. That's, I think, the bottom line. We just don't get how lucky we are.
All right. So how do we turn around our greed? And that's what I found out long ago, that if you want to make money, sell advertising. Because advertising has a 5-letter word that is this alternative word. It's called GREED, greed.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we also have, we also get greedy, don't we? We want everything now. You just mentioned that.
Yeah, we do. We want, the media really helps with this, and the big corporations. Everybody, many years ago, we didn't have the kind of debt that we have now. And I mean, I was talking to a client one time. She was getting ready to go to Europe with her whole family, and I said, "But you've got like $100,000 worth of credit card debt." She goes, "Oh yeah, but I have another $30,000 that's available, and we're going to go on that." And I said, "Well, how are you ever going to pay off your debt?" She said, "Well, I'm not. I'll just keep balancing it. Who cares? I'm just going to live for now. That's really all that matters." I said, "Have a great trip." Well,
a lot of people I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead.
A lot of people during Y2K took that attitude. They saw it as the end of the world. What they didn't understand was the concept is the end of the world as we know it. What that means is we live in constant change, and these changes, or as my dad once said, I asked him, I said, "What are those kidneys?" He's having kidney stones. I said, "What are they like?" He says, "It's the worst thing you can imagine, worst pain you can imagine. And it hurts so much that you move to a new position, and it hurts more, but you can't go back." And death gets that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. For sure.
I'm not trying to be a comedian. I just remember my dad trying to teach me things. I'd come home from school, and he'd say, "Well, what'd you learn?" And I'd start explaining it to him, and he'd say, "Oh yeah," and then he'd break it down so simple that even I began to understand it when I was trying to explain complicated theories. I was sure he was going to night school. So anyway, it's an opportunity for you though. Why don't you kind of scope out to us why you felt that it was important to make a difference and what you're doing to do that? Because we all want to make a difference in something, in ourselves, in our loved ones, in our family, in our relationships somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what happened for me was I was, doing my little accounting practice and having tax appointments, and they started turning into therapy sessions. And people would share stuff with me. I guess they felt like they could trust me or whatever, but all of a sudden I had people crying in my office. I've got husbands and wives saying, "See, I told you. Bob telling me wrong." And all of a sudden there was just a lot of this emotional stuff that was coming up on a regular basis that I was dealing with. And what I kept finding was that every time I would talk to somebody, they thought they were the only one. They thought everybody else had figured it out and that they were the only one that didn't get the memo. And and so there was a lot of shame and there was a lot of guilt and everybody has it better than I do. And I kept hearing that, and I finally said, "Oh my gosh, I got to start this conversation. People need to realize they're not the only one. That doesn't mean that they're going to fix everything overnight, but at least if we all know that we're all screwing up, then maybe there's a little bit of solace in that of I'm not alone. And so that was really the impetus for me to start the direction and writing the book, and really trying to get people to know that, look, you're not the only one. It's possible to get out of your situation. You didn't get there overnight, so you're not going to get out of it overnight, but let's start taking some baby steps and stop being a victim, because so many people that I run into, everybody that, outside forces happen to them. It's way beyond their control. They didn't have anything to do with their credit card debt. They didn't have anything to do with the, it all just happened. They were a victim. Yeah. So I'm trying to help people to stop being a victim and actually get up and do something in your life if you want to do something. And if you don't, that's cool too. Just do it consciously.
Well, is it because people won't take Is it typical that we don't like taking responsibility? Are we being dumbed down so much? Or don't we understand the principle of finance or economics?
Well, I think one of the key things about finance is the fact is it's the relationship that we have until we go or we transition, however you want to look at it. So it's one of those things that you can't just work on and then never deal with again, because we're constantly having to deal with money. It's been with us since the beginning of time, whether we're using bags of salt or we're dowries for brides. We've been using an exchange for services, and a lot of people want to be able to deal with it and then never deal with it again, and it gets overwhelming, and so people just want to check out because you don't get to quit halfway through. It's till the end.
So people have a need, one, to not feel responsible, right, as they're trying to put on the facade that they are responsible.
Right.
So we're facing that two-faced theatrical image, isn't it? The face is facing left, it smiles. The face on the left, it's grimacing or whatever. It's
right. We hide the grimace.
Yeah.
We hide the grimace and put out the smile.
Yeah.
So everybody thinks it's amazing. I have clients that like. Yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I have clients that tell their financial advisor something different than they tell me. And then when I'm talking to the financial advisor, they tell me, oh, they're on their budget, and they're doing this and this and this, and everything's going to be great. And I'll say, what are you talking about? They owe 3 years of back taxes. They haven't done this and that. What? The client lied to me? Yeah, they're telling you what they think you want them to say. They're not telling you the truth because you don't actually see it. And, it's just amazing. I was always told your accountant and your garbage collector know the most about you.
Yeah. Because they both get the garbage, actually.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So given that your effort is to try to make a difference, what do you do that is somewhat different? Now you mentioned that you probably put a couch in instead of a chair, but on the other hand, what is it you do or you see the need to do in order to help hapless people who've boxed themselves into a corner? They're angry with the government because they're there, and yet they have to deal with it in reality because you can't misrepresent it and keep your license and stay out of jail.
Right. Well, what I do is this. When somebody comes to me and they've got all these issues, I bring it to their attention that this isn't just going to be a logical, practical conversation, because I can explain things to them, but if they're locked in, I don't know anything about accounting, I don't know how to pay my taxes, I don't know anything about money. If they're going to stay in that frame of mind, they're not going to be able to make a shift to be able to hear me. So I don't even start having a conversation about practical numbers or setting up a budget until we actually start dealing with what are you afraid of, where do you get triggered, what happens when there's money not in the bank account, do you cry, do you shut down, do you just go out and spend things on your credit card, and so until I can start to understand and help them understand how they self-sabotage, there's no point in even having the rest of the conversation, and that's what I tell them. And then I ask them, do you really want to start to get conscious of what you're doing? And if they say no, I help them out the door. I had a client one time who she would we do business management accounting as well. So she would give me $20,000 and have me pay down $30,000 worth of debt. And after about 3 months, she couldn't understand why her debt wasn't going down because she told us to pay down 30 with the 20 she gave us. So I did a spreadsheet, gave her a real sense of reality of here's why we're not able to pay the bills. She called me up and said, "Don't you ever give me that kind of reality check again, ever."
I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that much about how bad off I am.
Right, because you're ruining my fun. I'm trying to have a good time, and you're actually throwing real numbers at me. I don't like you. So a lot of us want to a lot of people think that if you actually have information about your money, that it's going to mean that you can't have a good time, you can't enjoy things, it's restrictive. Instead of, now I have choices, I can be conscious, I can actually be in control of my life rather than being controlled.
Interesting. Well, given, of course, you're in a, I guess, L.A. is a high-profile town. There are a lot of people who one, it's a fairly wealthy clientele. Yeah, there are a lot of poor people there, but there's a goodly number of wealthy people simply because of the nature of business around it.
Right.
But they come and go. Obviously, some of those service industries do really, really well as long as they manage them properly, and I guess that's part of what you do also. But you deal with a lot of high-profile people who may not be in the paper, but they're still physically high-profile.
Well, you know, it's funny, when you say wealthy, I was thinking I actually deal with a lot of really poor people that generate millions of dollars because a lot of those people are just as bad off as somebody else. It's just they have the capability of generating $5 million, but then they spend it all. So they're really, you know, in their mind, just as poor as the guy next to them. But they make it look good because they may have no money, but they're driving a Mercedes or a Lexus, and they may not have made the payment in 10 months, but they're still driving it. So they look good, even though they're flipping out on the inside.
That's what's so funny. It's all about the appearance, isn't it?
It's absolutely. This is a place of you know, mirrors. It's make it look good, and the truth, you know, it's basically we're all living in a movie set in Los Angeles because a lot of people, there's nothing behind the fake house.
So it's facade. It's like Hollywood, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is. And there are some people that are amazing that they put away their money, they plan, and they've got money solid away. But I would say a good majority of people, the money comes to them, but it immediately leaves them. Well, for a lot of my wealthier clients, it actually takes them losing a house or losing a few of their what they think are necessities to realize this might not last forever. Because I have actors and directors that make $1 million a year, and they think that they're going to make $1 million forever, and then they're living like that, and all of a sudden they lose their show is canceled, and there's not $1 million coming in. And they don't know what to do. And even though I tell them when they get the show, this isn't going to last forever, they're like, yeah, I know. And at some point I'll budget for that. People don't like reality. People don't like reality. It's...
I can tell you I relate to this more than you know. I have a son who lives in Hollywood.
Okay.
He went out to be an actor, and he's 46 years old. He has a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get. But he's not doing. So he does other things. So he has a retail job, but he has friends and he hobnobs with them. He loves it. It's a lifestyle that he loves, and it's been more important to him than marriage and all settling down, and all the other kinds of things. Okay, whatever. So, I can't run his life for him. I try to tell him that your life is having a good life is not about skill sets. It's about an attitude, and I think maybe that's probably true about money too. It's not how skillful you are at handling it. It's how you feel about money, because we want to get back to those. I want you to talk to people. I want to hear more about emotions as really what trigger those are the triggers you're talking about. We want, so therefore we do. We get, and then we have to pay the price. And there is no decision we make, even getting chewing gum. Is an emotional. I need to chew on something. My breath needs to smell sweet. I need to work off this tension. Whatever. There's always an emotional reason for it. And to deny that is just kind of poppycock, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with having the feeling that you need that. It's just to be aware of what's going on. There's nothing wrong with getting, a stomach if you see a check bounce. It just doesn't mean you have to go out and jump off a bridge. It just means, okay, so you didn't have some funds today. That doesn't mean that you're not cash positive, but doesn't mean that you don't have assets. It's just sometimes it's just things sort of miss each other a couple of days. But it starts early, and a lot of people grow up with parents that were very anxious about money because it would come in and then it would go and then it would come in, and so it was sort of this roller coaster of feast or famine. And so a lot of people I hear that from a lot of people, that they grow up with anxiety about money, and so they start to carry that with them when they go into their adulthood and they don't get the download to perfectly manage their money. And I had a client who his grandfather invented a popular food item. They were living in a mansion. They had chauffeurs, but his parents and the grandparents were from the Depression era, and so all the time they were telling him, we could be thrown out in the street any moment. This is all going to go away. So he grew up thinking that at any moment he would be thrown out in the street, but he was going to private boarding school. They had a lot of money. They still have a lot of money. But his mindset is, my parents told me I was going to live in the street. So he grows up with that attitude, even though that's not reality.
But it's his reality.
It's his reality. And for him, it's very real.
Right. My wife is very much like that. She, her dad was a salesman on the road selling petroleum products for a company called Sinclair, which doesn't exist anymore, but is bought up by someone. But he moved around the country a lot, and so she was an only child and never had to always had leftovers. I grew up in a family of 6 or 7 people. Right. We never had leftovers. Right. And sometimes we didn't have enough for everybody to have a full serving, but it was, nobody starved. We never missed a meal. We went a long time between some of them, but we never missed them. And we didn't think we were poor. We thought we were wealthy because we had land and we had crops growing. And so my wife looks at the bills on the bills all come in, by the 5th of the month or so, and she adds up the bill. She says, we don't have the money to cover it. what she forgets is that every month I've got, I mean, she just obliterates from her mind the fact that I've got royalty checks coming in. I've got regularly. I've got sales going on all the time, and I've got retirement funds coming in. They come every month. That check comes with her. If I die, she'll come to her. But the thing is, she if there's not enough money in the bank to pay the bills immediately, she's broke. And if she walks around just sucking her thumbs, what are we going to do? I'm thinking, well, we're going to wait. We don't have to pay that for 10 days. And if we're 10 days late, nobody cares. Those are charges interest. And it just boggles her mind to think that it's not that rigid a world. In her mind, it's rigid because she's not an accountant. She doesn't do. She's not an economist.
Right. No,
so,
I think that's true for a lot of people. There's no money. There's nothing. We live in a time of I'm entitled to everything, but I'm living in scarcity. There's a lack of abundance in my life, and I've got to find more of it. I got to hurry up and find it. It's not here, it's over there, and so we're so busy trying to get over there instead of just enjoying being here while we move towards there.
Right. We don't live in the here and now.
Right. No.
So how do you get people to give up those emotions that literally strap them to a table where they can hardly move? How do you get people to get that?
Well, what I tell people is that you may not give them up, but I'll help you learn to not be controlled by them. So that, for example, I had somebody did a workshop a few weeks ago. They were at the store, and they were starting to pay for something, and they thought, oh my God, I don't have any money to pay for this. I'm going to go completely broke. And they said they realized they started playing this broken record that they normally play. And once they remembered that, wait a minute, this is a story, they just stopped and thought about all the money that they did have and that they had just gotten this other money, and they actually just did a quick inventory, and then they calmed themselves down and just said, oh, that's a silly story, I'm just not going to listen. So she may still always have a little bit of that response when she starts to make a big purchase, but if she can take a breath and remind herself, that's just a story that I'd like to go back to, but the reality is I've been working really hard, and I've been investing my money, and I totally have the money. So it's really more about just getting conscious of those things that trigger us and then learning to navigate around them.
But
becoming friends with our emotions.
Right. But they have to recognize those emotions first, don't they? That's the hard part, isn't it?
That is the hardest part. Getting conscious and then thinking about intention. Those are so important, but a lot of people don't want to get conscious. My first workshop, 2 people left after the first week. They were so angry because they thought in the first night that I was going to tell everybody how to make $1 million, and they didn't have to actually do any work. And when they found out they actually had to be aware of what they were doing, they said, we're out of here. This is crap. How dare you make me do part of the work to make myself a multimillionaire?
Now, I have a term for I have a rule for that. It's called you can't cure stupid.
That's for sure. If they had a cure for that, boy.
Well,
that'd be nice.
You indicate that people have nerves. They have money nerves.
Yeah.
That's a new expression to me, obviously. I'm sure we're going to understand when you explain it. But obviously, that's one where you just kind of take people on the shoulders, shake them till they wake up, and then say, you got a money nerve, and this is what triggers it, right? So tell us about that concept.
So for me, a money nerve is, and I think most people can hopefully relate to this, but if you think to a time where you overdrafted a bank account, you couldn't pay the rent, somebody confronted you on a debt that was owed, you had a physical reaction. We all tend to have a physical reaction, whether it's getting nauseous, whether there's a pit in the stomach, whether we pull our shoulders in and want to just shrink and hide. There's physical parts of our body that actually respond when we have negative interactions with money or finances. And so for everybody, that nerve may be in a different place. For a lot of people just get sick to their stomach, or they just or they want to hide. People have heart attacks over this stuff, and so once you can start to just like I like people to just check in, take a deep breath, however they want to get it, and just start to feel into what happens when this occurs. What happens when you don't have any money? What happens when you've cashed out the last of your savings, or you have to pay your taxes? I had a guy tell me that he would rather go to his doctor to find out if he had cancer than come in to do his taxes with me. And I said, wow, you're really messed up. That's really messed up. And so finding that emotional place in our body, that's the money nerve. And it's a little bit different for everybody, but we all have those physical reactions. And so once we can start to be aware of those, the next time we're looking at an overdraft, because I see a lot of those in LA, then we can start to say, oh, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. Let's see, wait a minute. How can I do this different? Maybe if I know I'm writing too many checks, maybe have my friend look at my bank account so I don't and just tell me the number instead of me looking and setting myself up to go through the emotional trauma.
Is that the hardest thing people don't have to do, is get control of that feeling? Because emotions are feelings, and if you feel, there are people who feel like, I had one son, he's outgrown it, but being single, he had a pretty good job, he earned a lot of money, and he was hanging out with people that he graduated with. He's done quite a little bit better, not a whole bunch, but enough that he felt, and he was single, so that was the difference. And so he would buy a drink for a few people. And next thing you know, he's buying a round of drinks for everybody every Friday night. They came to the place just because they knew about it. And pretty soon he didn't have, he was becoming impoverished very quickly. And he said, how do I break it? I said, well, my dad taught me, he said, son, if you can't change your friends, change your friends.
Right.
and I said, what? He said, yeah, if you can't change the friends you have, get some new friends.
Right.
And so if you can't handle certain obligations, then you've got to escape them on some matter. So this is is this the money nerve you're talking about?
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Absolutely. That's, a great example of like what you're talking about with your son, would be to, a lot of people wouldn't have the courage or the nerve to say, hey, look, guys, I'm tired of paying for everybody. I like you, but it's starting to hurt my budget because there's an ego attached to that. But, just not showing up and making a different change. But a lot of people want to keep the impression that, hey, I can do this forever. Because they get locked into their ego and they get locked into comparing themselves. A great way to get out of stuff, blame your spouse. You're at the store, a salesman saying, you got to buy this, you got to do it now, it's the only way. You know what? My wife will kill me. They'll say, oh, I get it, sorry, I won't bother you anymore. Find a way that even if it's a white lie that will allow you to get yourself out of a situation where you feel like you must do what they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And people, that's an ego problem, isn't it, with most of us?
Yes. And it's not egotistical, it's just our ego. We're invested in, we want to look good. We want people to think we're amazing and we're generous and we're successful. Because that's where we put our emphasis in this society. We don't emphasize they have amazing family life, they have rich life experiences, they have land, it's got to be, I've got the nicest car, my house is better. And that's what we tend to focus on.
How do you help people break that? How do people help? I guess they're going to have to help themselves.
Yeah.
What's the crux of that?
Well, so you know what? The one thing that I really work with people on is what I call mental mapping. And so what I mean by that is, so if I want to go from LA to New York, I can go by a bus, I can walk, I can take a train, I can ride a horse, I can fly there. Like, there's several ways to get to New York. Now, maybe I need to be in New York tomorrow, so a horse isn't going to serve me. So I have to look at, where am I, where do I want to go, and what result do I want? And then with that information, I can start to figure out the tools that I'm going to need to make that happen. So if I want to get to New York by an airplane, then I'm going to probably need to be able to buy a ticket and pay out some cash, or I'm going to need to pack some luggage. I'm going to need to get to the airport. I'm going to need to have somebody take me from the airport to my hotel. Like, you actually have to figure out all the actual items that you need to get there, and that's what we do with the finances. Where do I want to be? I want to have my own business. I want to have this much in retirement. I want to open a music studio. And then what do we need to get there, and what are the realities of your money right now to help us make that happen over a certain period of time. And that's what I do with people, is we actually take people's goals and dreams, and then we actually figure out the math and see if it works out. Like, I had a woman tell me, I want to have a music studio. And I said, great. When do you want to when would you like that to occur by? I want it to happen the next 6 months. I said, great. How much will it cost you? $10,000. How much can you put away each month? $200. Okay, well, you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
You're not going to get to $10,000 on $200 a month in 6 months. So then she said, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. So I said, okay, so let's go back and do the math. Let's actually make it, let's figure out how it could really work. And then we broke down, what is the money that you need? She said, well, I need $5,000 for a computer. I said, well, you can buy a refurbished computer. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. So now our budget dropped to $6,000. So, you know, we go in and we look at all the different things. We figure out what people want, and everybody wants different things. I want money for my children's education. I want to have a horse. I mean, what? Like, there's nothing's. I don't judge whatever people want. I just want to help them figure out how to make it happen.